Hello and welcome to this Kali Fundamentals lesson. I'm very excited to be here with you today. So what we're getting ready to jump into and what we're getting ready to discuss is how do you manage users in Kali? And so you may be asking yourself, I know that I come in as root. I know that that's the default user. What if I want to add a user for day-to-day use? Or what if I want to add a user for testing purposes? Well, now's the time to discuss that. So our lesson objectives today is to walk away with a high-level ability to check current users and groups. And so again, we just want to know what's on the system, and then the ability to add and delete users. So this isn't a long lesson, and we've just got some high points to touch on. So let's jump right in. So when we're wanting to check users and groups, and as they are in the Kali distribution, you're essentially going to be going to this etc password file. So you'll go to the etc directory, and there's a file there called passwd, and what you can do is you can run concatenate against that or the group file, and it'll give you these outputs here. So you'll notice on this end, we went to the etc directory using that cd command, and then from there what you'll do is you'll notice that we ran cat password. Now if you look over to the left of this line, you'll see that we've got sys and bin and daemon and root. These are all users on the system, and some of these are running in some of these areas with no login permissions, as it states over here, and so we can't log into those users, so they're there really for service purpose or some other purpose. And then when we did the same thing with the group file, you'll notice here we ran cat against group in that same etc folder. It shows us again the current groups that are in our distribution. So not a lot there. It's really just going to that particular file and being able to see what's on the system. So as you continue to work through Linux, or if you use it day to day and you feel maybe there's a user on the system that you need to check into or that you may not have been aware of, or if you just check regularly, you can use these two locations to give you a better idea of what's going on in your distribution, or to ensure that you've added a user correctly. So let's go ahead and talk about that for a moment as well. So when we look at adding and deleting users, what you've got here is the add user command and the user delete command, or del command, and that here, this is just where you replace username with the actual username. So as you can see here, we were still in that etc folder, and we were able to execute the add user command, and we added a test user, and it went through each of these areas, describing where it was adding the user, adding the group. It created a home directory, as you can see here, and then it asked us for a password, which we just did test in this case, and then it asked for all this information to describe the user, and then at the end it designates whether or not it's correct. And so once you go through that process, and we went back to that passwd file and we did a cat again, we'll see here at the end that we now have a test user. So when we then on the other side of that run the user del command and we put test on the end, as you can see here, it runs. It doesn't give you any feedback if the entry was correct, but then we'll see once we look in that passwd file again that the test user is no longer there. So with those things in mind, let's just do a real brief check on learning. So what is the name of the file containing current users? And so we talked about two types of files that had some information in them. Which one had current users? All right, so looking at the options that we have here, SSH config is a config file, so there's definitely not user information in that. We didn't talk about a user's file or anything of that nature. We did talk about group, but again, in this particular file, it has group information, and the passwd file contained a lot of information to include current users. So if you guessed passwd, you did an excellent job there. So again, this was a brief lesson. We didn't want to get too deep into users and adding and deleting users, just really a high level way that you can start to manipulate users as if you need them for testing purpose, or if you're going to create an account for day-to-day purposes. And so we learned how to check those users and groups using that passwd and group files in the etc directory. And then we talked about how to add and delete users. So I want to thank you for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.